Just walking normal.
To protect the privacy of the injured worker. And what we're going to do is we're going to show these videos, and I'd like to demonstrate the importance of several of the principles that we've gone through so far, and I'll point those out as they become evident. Okay, so the question that I have for you, here we are, we're about ready to evaluate gait from an anterior view as the injured worker walks 20 yards towards us. So the question that I'm having for you as you watch this videotaping is this an example of normal or abnormal gait? Okay, so we'll begin our video tape here, and I'd just like to have you make a determination as to whether or not this is normal.
Just walking normal.
Well, what we could safely say is if there is a gait disturbance there, whatever it is, it's subtle. And the one thing that stands out perhaps as an abnormal finding would be possibly a right external rotation of the right lower extremity, contributing to a foot flare on the right. Other than that, there are no major gait disturbances that I would report, and I suspect that you would probably state the same. Let me give you a little history on this injured worker. This is a 22-year-old male who had his left leg jammed between a metal pole and the forks on a forklift, and it resulted in a crush of the distal tibia and fibula. This required open reduction and internal fixation with the placement of screws and plates both in the tibia and the fibula. And these are the post-surgical scars. This is the fibula, scar over the fibula that has a plate and screws, and this is the scar over the tibia that had some reconstructive screws in place, and they're still in place. And they were in place at the time of this examination. So that is a history. With a different view, let's see if we can identify disturbance this post-surgical lower extremity. You can see he has a lack of dorsiflexion, which results in a shortened stance phase, especially on push-off phase. See how he gets off it, gets off it, gets off it. And it's interesting. I hope you caught that, doctors. That's he had a slightly shortened stance phase due to a lack of dorsiflexion at the ankle at the push-off phase. What about this case? Tell me, in your opinion, is this normal or abnormal gait? Is there a gait disturbance at all?
And back.
Disturbance here, doctors? Lower extremity rhythm appears fine. How about upper extremities? It's absolute lack of arm swing. Would you agree? There's no arm swing. And notice the contracture of the right upper extremity. There's flexion contracture at the elbow, at the wrist, and at the fingers. And this is an injured worker who has a superimposed early tremor disorder, diagnosed as early Parkinson's disease, not yet manifest in gait disturbance of the lower extremity, but manifest as a disturbance in the rhythm of the upper extremity and loss of reciprocal arm swing in the upper extremities. And so the question you might be wondering is, does this qualify for permanent impairment as a gait disturbance? Well, the Parkinson's disease, of course, was non-industrial, but hypothetically, could disturbance in upper extremity function that results in a loss of reciprocal arm swing during gait, could that qualify for permanent impairment? Well, under the strict applications of chapters 13 and chapter 17, probably not correct. But under Alvarez-Guzman 2, I leave that to your imagination and your own judgment as to whether, in your opinion or not, loss of arm swing during normal phases of gait would qualify for permanent impairment or not. Certainly it results in a disturbance of gait because reciprocal arm swing is important. I think it would be safe to say that without reciprocal arm swing, it would certainly make running difficult, if not impossible. It would make walking fast difficult or not impossible. And so I simply introduce this here to stimulate your thinking. And later on we have another example of an upper extremity case. And so we'll refer back to the possibility of analogous impairments to Alvarez-Guzman as relates to the importance of the arms in the normal phases of gait.
Normalmente. Está bien.
Would be subtle at most. Would you agree, doctors? It would be subtle, if at all. Significant gait disturbance here, and when I questioned the injured worker as to whether or not, in his opinion, he felt like he had pain or limp or any kind of compensation for his gait, he denied that, even though he had a serious left knee injury where he had a direct contusion. He fell directly down onto his knee and aggravated some pre-existing degenerative changes and caused new injury to the knee. After a period of time, treatment and healing, the knee recovered most function, and while I found some permanent impairment for the knee, I did not find permanent impairment due to gait disturbance, and he was in agreement with that.
Esto es requerido
lateral thigh pain, not posterior thigh pain, and no pain below the knee, strictly left thigh pain. Well, safe to say that if there is a gait disturbance there, it would be subtle. There's not a major gait disturbance, but perhaps you could hallucinate that there was a slight shortening of the stance phase or something, perhaps. whatever it is, it would be slight. Following a lower back lifting, twisting injury. What I found on this is I noted that there was a slight shortening of the stance phase on the left leg. However, when I reviewed this multiple times, over and over, I found that the shortening of the stance phase on the left leg was not consistent with every step. And on some steps it was absent, and on some steps it appeared exaggerated. And based upon the findings of the physical examination and some other historic inconsistencies, I opined that I did not find this to be a credible or consistent gait disturbance, and I did not provide permanent impairment for gait disturbance. This is a young woman with right shoulder and upper extremity injury, and she reports that she cannot hang her arm down to the side, and as a result that when she walks she has to hold on to the lapel of her jacket or put her hand in her pocket so as to avoid strain on tendons and tissues in the shoulder. And based upon physical examination findings, historic findings, medical records findings, and later findings of functional capacity evaluation, I found this consistent with the condition of her shoulder, and I opined for a gait disturbance under Alvarez-Guzman due to loss of reciprocal arm swing of the upper extremities. So interesting case there.